So actually, my transition away from the 9 to 5 wasn't necessarily for dance. I had a health scare, and that led to just I had to take time off.
Okay.
That's when I was roundabout diagnosed with GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, and I also had occipital neuralgia. I had a lot of like injuries where I had to do a lot of health scans, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. So I actually had a period of time where I could not work. I was very overwhelmed with a lot of the health stuff I was going through. So at that time, I think I started taking time off, or I maybe work part-time. And I think round about that time is when I got an email from Assis. It was a cold email, and we had both done the Bali Shake, shout out Bali Shake, challenge to Bomb Diggy. And she had seen my Instagram video, because Bali Shake used to be that place where you post everything, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the most visibility you get is Bali Shake.
Yeah.
So she cold emailed me and she was like, hey, you want to dance together? Let's collab. And I didn't realize she sent it to me. I responded like a while later. I was like, oh yeah, let's do it. You know, she's like, oh yeah, you're a brown girl who does this vibe. I'm a brown girl who does it. Let's just do it. I was like, all right, let's do it. So I think it was, oh God, John, something like that. We did a collab on a song. And yeah, we filmed it and it was such a vibe. It was so fun. And then I had already been training for a while. I used dance, I think, as a form of therapy as well for GAD for myself, just to feel more in tune with my body and more connected to my body, because I think sometimes with anxiety, it is an out-of-body experience. So you can I think dance is a great tool because it connects you really to everything in front of you, like your hand, your leg, or whatever. So I was already training. I was training a lot Perry dance. I was training at BDC. I was going twice a week for consistent on. That was my way of helping myself, I think, with my GAD. And that's the time when dance came into my life. And that's the time when Assis also and I worked together for the first time. And then we just decided, hey, let's maybe start teaching. And it wasn't called SA Grooves or anything like that. But I think that was the reason actually for my transition from the 9 to 5. It wasn't necessarily like, I'm going to do this for dance. It was, I had a health scare. I needed to take care of it. Dance helped me with it. And then it just kept going. And dance just kept going. And then that's kind of how it happened for me.
Welcome to the Improving Humans podcast, where improving humans share their stories, experiences, and lessons to help other humans improve. Today I'm joined by Tanya Thanwalla. She is a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania and the CEO and founder of Bollywood Street Jazz, under which she's taught, I think at this point, tens of thousands of students, create concept videos that has millions of views, and created some pretty remarkable creative outlets like Stories by Tanya and Tanya On Demand. But I'm excited today because I would love to peel back the layers of how you've navigated public perception, how you have the creative confidence to do what you do, how you navigate the energy to do all that you do, and really just get a better understanding of you as a person. So I so appreciate you taking the time to sit with me, and thanks for inviting me in.
Oh my God, you're so sweet.
So I wanted to start on the perception side, and I think, like many of us probably watching, we've only ever seen you either in class or we've seen you on social media. So I'd love to peel back the layers a little bit and just learn about you. So if we could start like early on in life, like you as a kid, what were some of your like core personality traits? Like what were you like growing up?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, first of all, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome.
I'm happy to be chatting with you. I never get that many opportunities to speak about my background. And yes, a lot of people know me from classes or my students, or my students have gone on and done other things in their life, and but I never get a chance to really speak about kind of where I come from and my background. So I'm always grateful to have that opportunity. So thank you.
Of course.
So what I was like kind of as a kid.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I was a nerd. When I say that lovingly, because I think nerds are great. But yeah, I was born in Dallas, Texas. So, I have that classic immigrant family, came over. My dad actually was born in Kenya.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we go 3 generations back. So Nairobi, Kenya. My great-grandfather left on a boat from Thane in India, and they came to British at the time, is British ruled Kenya, and they stayed there.
Wow.
Even after the British left and everything. So my dad was born in Kenya, and so born to an immigrant family in Dallas, Texas. My dad is kind of one of my biggest heroes because he went through a lot, and he educated himself, and he put us in private school. So,
wow.
So I was at Green Hill. Shout out Green Hill in Addison, Texas. I switched to private school in about middle school. It's when my dad could afford to send us to private school, and he worked really hard to be able to do that for us, for all of his kids. And so I was the nerd. I was like, I have to work really hard. I was kind of like the kid, I think, who wanted to always make her parents proud. And I did debate as a kid. I was the classic shout out LD debaters. Doing shout outs here, because if you were in Lincoln Douglas debate or policy, you kind of know where I'm coming from. Debate was a very intense thing in high school. And yeah, I used to be that kid who got like the book awards as a kid for trying to get as many A's as I could. People would be like, what are you doing on the weekend? I'd be like, I'm writing my essay. Sorry, that's very loud. But I used to spend every weekend, like, I didn't want to do anything. I'd just sit in front of my computer. I'd like write my essays, do my homework. Wow. It was a tough school, but I was always like, no, I'm gonna graduate. I want to be valedictorian. I was that kid. Spoiler alert, I was not a valedictorian or anything like that, but it was cool. It was chill. I did a lot of work, I think, throughout high school and like the middle school time that I was, growing up in Dallas, Texas. But dance was always very important to me. I was a studio kid, so I did the classic jazz, contemporary, commercial hip hop. I went to Center for Dance. Shout out Center for Dance in Addison, Texas, which is a very popular studio in Texas. I think Ishani actually taught there recently.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I was a studio kid, and I did dance company in high school, and we used to do like modern dance and contemporary dance. And so, yeah, as a kid, I was a nerd, but I think I always had this great love for dance. It kind of came to me as I was a kid, and then developed kind of as an extracurricular of sorts.
That's amazing, and I would love to learn, so work ethic is clearly a part of who you are as a person. Nerdiness in terms of, do you just love learning about things, or was it just dedicated just to school, or you were like, I just need to...
It's a very good question. I think I always had a passion for deepening my understanding of different things, like different cultures, different backgrounds. History was kind of my thing, or English. I loved, we would read the Odyssey. We would read Dante's Inferno. We really got in depth there in high school, but we'd write essays on the abstracts of it, and if you could justify some interesting take on what this meant about the hero, what this meant about the protagonist, or whatever it was. And I always nerded out that way. I was really into it. But I think also I was exposed to a lot of this when I was a kid. So even when I entered my 8th grade class at Green Hill, I started learning Mandarin Chinese. And that was very rare back then. This is 2007 or something. I mean, you didn't really get access to Mandarin Chinese at that time in a school setting. So I always had that, I think, interest in learning about things. But yes, with regards to school, probably came from my dad, especially, was this idea of, if you have an opportunity like going to private school or getting a really great education, then absolutely you should take advantage of it. And absolutely you should be working hard for it. And I think, it might be an immigrant mentality. I don't know. I think some people say that it is, but I just think it was my values coming from even my parents. But even myself, I think inherently I was just trying to consume as much as I could, because what a great opportunity it was to be able to kind of dive deep into those things.
And were the people that you were surrounded by outside of family, but even at school, etc., did they have similar mentalities in terms of their maybe have a more worldly view, or also learning these things, or were you an anomaly in that sense?
In the sense of like, was I kind of the only person
like that interested in learning about all these things, or?
That's a good question. No, I wouldn't say I was the only one.
Okay.
Maybe I was like rather intense as a kid.
Okay.
Maybe I would say that. I would say it was maybe a little too intense.
Okay.
If I look back, I would have been like, chill out, Tanya.
Mm.
Have some fun. But I think that as a kid, I had a lot of things going on that I think I was more introverted anyways. I think I preferred to be alone, working on my own thing. I didn't want to have too many people around me. I'm still kind of that way. And I think I was fine with just reading the book and writing the essay all weekend, honestly. And then hanging out with my parents, watching like one of those Indian dramas with my mom.
I love it.
You know, like where they have the dishum scenes. And I grew up in a very desi household, so you know, go to the movies with my mom, or just very chill, like hanging out with my family. And then I was perfectly fine doing that, and then digging deep into schoolwork or even dance, because I could go to dance and be around people, but I could still be by myself and doing my own thing.
Sure. And what I would love to read for people, because this was a surprise to me and it was super interesting to learn about, and I want to make sure I get this right. So you studied political science with a concentration in international relations, and you minored in Chinese, so you started taking Chinese early on.
Yeah.
You also took courses in South African political thought, gender and development, and third world politics.
This is at university.
Yeah. So that is pretty remarkable that you took all those classes, but hearing your background a little bit in terms of how much you love to learn and sort of your interest in those things makes sense. So I would love to learn about your decisions to go into those courses. Was it just a continued education? I want to learn about people. Did you think there was going to be an application of this career-wise? Like, what was your thought process maybe going into that?
Yeah, I mean, when I went to Penn, I was one of those kids that I think in my school itself, like, we were encouraged to go through the college admissions process very early on. We were really focused on getting into the best schools we could get, and we had college admissions officers. We had a lot of resources to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Also working on your SATs, or I took the ACTs, but it was a very rigorous process. I'm sure it still is a very rigorous process for people to you know, to get into college or whatever. It's very stressful. And I think that when I got into the University of Pennsylvania, I actually wasn't sure about it. I was kind of caught in between a couple of schools. I ended up going to the University of Pennsylvania. It turned out to be the best decision I could probably have made, because I think Penn is an interesting place. It is a very big school. Yeah. People don't realize the University of Pennsylvania has like 4 different schools, really, right? It's Wharton, which is the business school. It's the College of Arts and Sciences, which is I went to the college. There's the nursing school. There's the engineering school, and then there's like programs you can do in between, like the M&T program, which is both like engineering and I believe the Wharton classes. And but you can pretty much gain access to every and any class you want to a certain degree.
Right.
You want to take a class at Huntsman or whatever, do a course that's part of maybe like the Wharton school. I believe there were opportunities to kind of get into it, I think. But I think for me, you know, I think the curriculum at Penn was already pretty diverse. You had to take certain credits to kind of complete your degree. And I think to a certain extent, some of my high school decisions informed my college studies. Like getting into Chinese was kind of like, it's a continuation of me doing Chinese. Right. I was like, I've done this since 8th grade. I'll just keep going. Like, it's fine. And then, of course, the rigor of the Chinese program at Penn was a bit different than my high school.
Sure.
But I was like, okay, this makes sense. Political science, same thing. I had a political science major. I think that I was a debater. I was really into like the idea of, I mean, when you're in debate in high school, people don't understand this. It was a very rigorous thing. You would go to debate summer camps, and you would be reading theories of philosophy on Kant and theorizing utilitarian versus, deontology, and you would go through frameworks of reference to justify your policy decisions, and you'd have affirmative and negative and rebuttals and cross-ex, and it was very intense. Yeah. Lincoln Douglas debaters,
Shout out.
Policy debaters know even more. I mean, the rate at which you read, there was like a thing where you would read really fast, you'd be like, have to get through like a card or something. Debaters know what I'm talking about. And you'd practice your speed at which you could deliver like your first speech or whatever. Gosh, I don't even remember everything, but I think that really did inform my political science. I was like, this makes sense. Like maybe I'll go to law school or something. Like I was like, this is a continuation of a lot of my high school decisions, and it made sense. I mean, you're still 18 or 19 and you really don't know what you want, but you end up, I think, kind of figuring out in college, or you change courses or whatever. I think for me, I just kept doing what I had thought I was interested in. Yeah. And then, of course, Penn actually was what introduced me to the dance scene. I was on Strictly Funk, which again was a very rigorous dance team at Penn. And I also think, and shout out to Penn for this, because they were very good about allocating resources and investing money in the fine arts. So they were really, really dedicated to, how should I say this? Like literally giving these student arts groups tons of money and resources to be able to put on big shows. That's awesome. Like I remember with Strictly Funk, even like the school would allocate resources under SAC or whatever it was, so that you could afford lights and you could afford to rent out theaters and you could afford to have some sort of costume budget. And I'd never seen in the academic world per se, a school that would also be dedicated to developing arts. And I think that was really exciting for me, because I was like, oh, wow, this is serious. Like, you know what I mean? People are taking arts seriously. And it's not just school. And so I do think that Penn helped foster that sense of accomplishment in the dance scene as well for me. And not just like my political science major or my Chinese, whatever. So I actually think when I decided to go to Penn, it opened a lot of doors for me, that I started learning things maybe that were not part of what I did in high school necessarily, but broadened, I think, my exposure. And then therefore I was able to foster a passion for some other things as well. So
that's incredible. And I would love to learn about sort of like the juxtaposition between like your academic work, but also you dancing on the side. So I think like, especially starting early on and then into school, which is awesome, by the way, that Penn did all of those things, because that's definitely unheard of, at least from my experiences. So how did that balance happen? Because you're obviously dedicating a lot of time to your schoolwork. You're doing a ton of studying, but then you're also dedicating what sounded like a stringent, like dance schedule. Like they took it very seriously and there's a lot of commitment. Yeah. So how did you balance the both of them? I mean, was it just like, were you exhausted a lot of the time doing all that stuff? Like did it feel like a lot of pressure that you were doing all this stuff? Like how did you navigate all that?
It is a good question, because the rigor of doing an extracurricular plus your major or your minor or whatever it is, I mean, it can't be underestimated how difficult it is to juggle everything. That being said, I think because I went to a private school where the schoolwork was pretty heavy, I did debate. So when I used to travel quite a bit for debate as well. Like I would, every other weekend by my senior year, I was going to Berkeley to compete, or Harvard round robin to compete. Wow. Or I would be going to like the state tournaments in Texas, or I mean, there were weekends we actually did to travel to compete. So I would say the rigor, to be quite honest, was a lot less at Penn than it was for me when I was juggling all the other stuff in high school. And my parents know this because they know how stressed out I was. But even till today, my mom is like, chill out. I love my mom. She's really fun. But I think at Penn, there was rigor involved. We would have, I think most collegiate dance teams would know this. I did not compete. Strictly Funk was not a competitive dance team. We were a performance-based team. But we did shows. We would have our fall show and our spring show and semester programs of like where we would be rehearsing to put on the show for 3 nights. And it would always be a theme show. Wizard of Oz, plus whatever we presented. Oh, cool. Dante's Inferno, which was my directing show, plus whatever else we wanted to add.
You did Dante's Inferno as a show?
I did it as a show. I co-directed video footage it. Of this. Actually, the people should look that up. So we had lights, we had costumes, we had videography. to the extent that we could do it in 2014, or 2013 or whatever it was. But I graduated a while ago. But the rigor was not as difficult. Like, I would still have hell weeks. I would still have hell weeks where, like, the week right before a show where you'd be, like, rehearsing from 6 to midnight or whatever it was. Everybody knows what I'm talking about if you were on a dance team in college. But the rest of it, going to school, going to rehearsal, not that big of a deal. I mean, maybe I'd have 10 hours of rehearsal a week or something like that. But I could juggle it because it was a lot less stress for me than maybe my high school debate career and my high school like education. So, I think I was pretty fine. I think also there are a lot of other things you can do. Of course, you socialize, you go out, you meet people, there are events, things like that. I started being able to actually do those things, I think, in college. It was really cool.
Gotcha. And then once you leave college and this is the LinkedIn section of your interview.
Shout out LinkedIn.
Shout out LinkedIn. You've worked as a legislative intern, a litigation paralegal, and a quality insurance operations manager. And then in 2018, you end up leaving the corporate world. But I would love to learn about that period of time where you were doing all those jobs, because you obviously had sort of dance as a foundational piece of what you're doing in your life, but you've dedicated yourself career professional wise to doing the 9 to 5. I'm sure it was more than 9 to 5, but but that sort of phase of your life. I would love to learn about sort of like going into it, and then like maybe moments of if you were feeling accomplished with it, if there was something that didn't feel fulfilling, like what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I think switching from your 9 to 5 to anything else is different. For sure, it takes a lot of guts too, because it can be scary to do something that's not as stable or doesn't seem as maybe stable is not the word, maybe like as consistent as like a 9 to 5, which gives you a consistent salary and whatever it is. Yeah. But although nowadays you don't really know what's happening in the market, so either way, I think it's a little bit of a gamble. But I mean, there's things too, right? When you give up your 9 to 5, you're also giving up like healthcare, you're giving up access to certain things you have to figure out. But I think actually for me, actually my transition away from the 9 to 5 wasn't necessarily for dance. I had a health scare, and that led to I had to take time off. Okay. That's when I was roundabout diagnosed with GAD, generalized anxiety disorder. And I also had occipital neuralgia. I had a lot of like injuries where I had to do a lot of health scans, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. So I actually had a period of time where I could not work. I was very overwhelmed with a lot of the health stuff I was going through. So at that time, I think I started taking time off, or I'd maybe work part-time. And I think round about that time is when I got an email from Assis. It was a cold email, and we had both done the Bali Shake, shout out Bali Shake, challenge to Bomb Diggy. And she had seen my Instagram video, because Bali Shake used to be that place where you post everything. Right? Like, that's the most visibility you get is Bali Shake. Yeah. So she cold emailed me, and she was like, hey, you want to dance together? Let's collab. And I didn't realize she sent it to me. I responded like a while later. I was like, oh yeah, let's do it. You know, she's like, oh yeah, you're a brown girl who does this vibe. I'm a brown girl who does it. Let's just do it. I was like, all right, let's do it. So I think it was, John, something like that. We did a collab on a song. And yeah, we filmed it, and it was such a vibe. It was so fun. And then I had already been training for a while. I used dance, I think, as a form of therapy as well for GAD for myself, just to feel more in tune with my body and more connected to my body, because I think sometimes with anxiety, it is an out-of-body experience. So you can I think dance is a great tool because it connects you really to everything in front of you, like your hand, your leg, or whatever. So I was already training. I was training a lot Perry dance. I was training at BDC. I was going twice a week for consistent on. That was my way of helping myself, I think, with my GAD. And that's the time when dance came into my life. And that's the time when Assis also and I worked together for the first time. And then we just decided, hey, let's maybe start teaching. And it wasn't called SA Grooves or anything like that, but I think that was the reason actually for my transition from the 9 to 5. It wasn't necessarily like, I'm going to do this for dance. It was, I had a health scare. I needed to take care of it. Dance helped me with it. And then it just kept going. And dance just kept going. And then that's kind of how it happened for me.
I so appreciate you explaining that, and this so goes to the why I'm so glad we're sitting down of the perception piece, because even me doing research, I saw the gap from like, okay, you stopped in 2018,
Yeah.
and then you founded SA Groove, so I'm like, that must be why.
Yeah, people think that.
Yeah.
They think that. Not everyone knows about my GAD diagnosis or how crippling it was.
Yeah.
And even till to this day, I don't think I maybe always had it, but I didn't really. I didn't know how to deal with it, probably. And then it came to a point, I think, in early adulthood where I had to see someone about it. I was having panic attacks consistently. I was hyperventilating consistently. I was in a lot of pain, nerve pain. I had a lot of issues where I was going to a number of doctors and they were testing me for a lot of scary things because that's what doctors do when they're trying to diagnose something. And then decided to try psychotherapy, and then dance came, and then so that was kind of I had to deal with those things, and I think my 9 to 5 I could not sustain while handling those things. So I think everyone has gone through maybe elements of anxiety or mental health is really obviously very important. But I think for me, GAD became a thing where I was seeing real life effects. I couldn't ride trains. I would get panic attacks. I couldn't fly. I would get panic attacks. Like, I missed my brother's high school graduation because I couldn't fly to Texas. I couldn't do it. I missed one of my cousin's wedding in Kenya because I could not make that flight. I barely could fly like one city over. And so everything just stopped for me. And I went through a lot of tests and a lot of things to get to a point where I could actually feel like I was stable in my element, in my body, in my health. So that's actually the reason why I transitioned away from the 9 to 5. I had to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind talking about it, like, your life does come to a stop at a certain point, and so much of your identity may be tied to all of those things that you were doing previously, and then it takes a complete stop. So if you don't mind talking about it, like, I would love to learn about how you dealt with that emotionally, especially if it's something that's a part of your identity. Now you're trying to rework, like, how am I supposed to operate moving forward? Like, how do I even continue back to a sense of normalcy, or at least some level of that? Like, how did you manage all of that?
You mean with regards to leaving behind the corporate life?
All of that. And then even like parts of your identity, or thinking like, how am I supposed to, I guess, operate moving forward? Yeah,
I think when you're in survival mode, there are a lot of things that come into focus for you that you don't really have even the luxury of time to figure out who I am as a person, because you just want to survive, and you just want to be able to feel like you're not and that's really a lot of times your nervous system gets so pulled out of sorts that you cannot trigger your nervous system to literally calm down. Like, it feels like you're dying. That's what a panic attack feels like. But I think when you're in that and it was a very dark time, I think, in my life when I was 24, 25, actually. And I think I had a lot of good people to help me through that. And dance, of course. But I think that I just wanted to make it to the next day. Like, I just wanted to get through a day without a panic attack. I just wanted to be able, like, it's like, okay, I can't ride in a train, that's okay. But if my nervous system calms down while I'm sitting down and I'm not having to take a train, then that's fine. I'll take it. You know what I mean? So, and I was in a lot of pain. Because I was also dealing with occipital neuralgia. So I had nerve issues in my skull and in the back of my eye and down my neck, and I was just going through a lot. So I was just trying to make it through the next day. I was like, I'm sorry to everybody for missing all events, but I was like, I just have to make it through the next day. So touch wood, I had really good support system, good family and everything, and I was able to, I think, move past it, but it took many years. I think I mentioned this off the record, but on the record, I mean, I remember Assis knows this very well. She would hold my hand every time we'd go through a tunnel. Like if I remember we were going to Jersey to teach in Edison, and there was a section where you go underneath that tunnel to get to Jersey. She would hold my hand just so I wouldn't have a panic attack, or help me through that. Or we fly to California and that was a big flight for me alone at that time. She held my hand because I was like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And then, we taught in LA and SF, but I don't think many people knew that I was dealing with that as I was trying to travel and tour for SA Grooves. So, no, Assis was like also there for kind of as I was going through how to deal with a lot of that and how to, even ride trains again and how to go through tunnels and how to take flights so that I wasn't having panic attacks and things like that. Or I did CBT as well, cognitive behavioral therapy, where they teach you grounding techniques, they teach you breathing techniques. Like for example, the 4-7-8 or 4-7-7 breathing technique was something that was helpful for me even till today. If I'm getting a panic attack on a flight, I will use the breathing technique to help prevent me from having a full-blown thing on a flight. Or I have grounding techniques where I'll wear something and I'll press into it so I can feel in control of myself. I can ground myself in my present senses. So I think people with GAD probably have it to some degree, and you manage it. So I manage mine, and I'm much better now than I was back then. But yeah, I mean, long story short, I didn't really have time to figure out who I was or what I wanted. I was just so focused on, I just want to feel better. And I was kind of in a survival mode of sorts, that I wanted to do things that made me happy and feel safe. And that was dance for sure. Because I was always grounded in myself when I was choreographing or when I was dancing. I was like, okay, I'm in my body. And if I lift my hand, here it goes.
Yeah, there it is.
And actually helps a lot with that out of body experience. It grounds you in yourself. So yeah, no, dance, absolutely. I never thought I would come back to it in the way that I did, but I, in some ways, did it out of survival mode. And then it just became something that became a part of my life and now my job. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so remarkable that something that turns out to be survival mode for you blooms into now it's your career. I mean, it's where you're able to sustain yourself, but also sustain yourself not just financially, but you have your safe space now and you have sort of like your ability to navigate all of the things you're navigating. I would love to learn, if you don't mind talking about it, of like the process of getting to a place where you're able to maintain it a lot better, because I'm sure the early days of it were extremely difficult because your knowledge about it and your ability with the techniques. Like, how did you get the help, in case there's anybody who's watching this like that potentially is dealing with this as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a licensed psychotherapist or therapist. I have a very good friend of mine, Farah Koja, who just graduated from school and stuff. She has her own clinic and stuff. She does podcasts about a lot of things. Nice. That, and her field is probably specific that I don't know. But anyways, I have people in my life I know who have gone to school for this and stuff. Yeah. And there's so much available on social media now, even with podcasts and Instagram posts, and you can find even licensed professionals offering advice on social media. Things are more accessible now for sure across the board, but I guess what I would say, not as a licensed therapist, but as someone who's experienced a diagnosis that felt very severe, to a certain degree, made it very crippling for me to live I would say a normal day-to-day life, and it a lot of ways inhibited me from sometimes doing what I love, or inhibited me from just being with people I wanted to be with. Like for my brother, when he graduated high school, was a big moment for my family, and weddings that I missed and all those things. I would say, like, I didn't think I needed to see a therapist. I was like, nope, I'm fine. There's something else wrong with me. Like, there is a diagnosis. I just need medication, need a surgery, something, something out there, not in my head space that is wrong with me. I don't need to see a therapist. Like, that was my attitude. I was always trying to fix it with something else. And I think it was my family that I think helped me see that maybe this would be a helpful path. And I refused until even as I got the diagnosis, I was like, this is not real. This is not happening to me. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, there's something else. Like, but I think that your body remembers trauma. Your body doesn't forget trauma. Things that happen when you're younger, things that happen in high school, things that happen in your adult life. There's a number of environmental triggers for sure that can exacerbate a problem. But I think that if you're someone who is struggling in any type of way with mental health, I think it's so important to invest that time and those resources to seek some sort of professional help, even if you don't think it's going to be helpful. And you should shop around. You should find somebody you can talk to who can help put thoughts into perspective. Because when you're going through something, in retrospect, you can always say, oh, yeah, I should have done X, Y, and Z. But when you're in the moment, or you're in survival mode, or your thoughts are just distributed in so many different ways, and sometimes you can't even control them, you need, I think, some help to kind of bring you back to center. And so I would encourage people who, whether you have GAD or not, or you have anxiety or not, I think everybody at some point in their life needs help. And I think going to a licensed professional who studied this, who understands this, they may have access to knowledge and resources that you don't have, and tools that can actually be helpful. Like for me, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, was huge. Like, I chose not to do medication, but I had alternative things that I could use to help keep my anxiety managed and keep it at bay. So I would just say, you know, everyone goes through moments in life which are very, very difficult, but I think, and I would encourage you to see if a professional licensed therapist, whether it's a psychotherapist or a psychologist, I think putting in the investment of time to even look for one can be very, very helpful to you. And I would also say it doesn't change overnight. It comes back in doses where it's more intense than others, but you stay consistent. And the other thing I would say is also your environment. If you have the ability to change your environment to such where you feel safe, you should do that. And you have every right to. So I think your environment can really help with your mental health as well. Surrounding yourself with people who love you, surrounding yourself with the right environment for your nervous system is very important, and you shouldn't feel ashamed of doing that because it's your health and it's your life. So absolutely, you should. I think you should be able to do those things for yourself.
I so appreciate you sharing that, and it seriously means a lot, you opening up about that.
Sorry, I got real serious there.
No, that's the entire point, because like I think a lot of people may be dealing with just some form of something, like you said, whether it's trauma from when you're younger or going through it now, etc. So the fact that you can open up and talk about it seriously means a lot. So.
Yeah, no, I think when you're I mean, I'm now in my 30s, but when you're in your 20s, you don't know anything really.
No.
You're quite unsure about things, and you think that the adults in the room should know more than you, and you think X, Y, Z, and you're sometimes you're like, I'm in my 20s, like I should be living my life, like nothing's wrong with me. If something's wrong, it's a physical thing, like and like I said, I was like this high achiever, I think, from a young age, that I was just like, what are you talking about? Like therapy, like what? I don't understand. You know, like, so like I said, in retrospect, I'm like, yes, Tanya, you should have been seeing a psychotherapist. But like in the moment, you're like, you don't have that life experience, I think, to be able to be like, this makes sense. I had people around me that were helping me through that because they were not in it, so they could see my behavior and be like, well, this is not a reaction I've not seen this person do. Something might be off, or this person used to be very independent and very carefree in certain aspects, like taking a train. You know what I mean? But no longer can do that. Something may be off. So I had people around me encouraging me to seek those resources.
Which is great. And I think sometimes we always do think like, why didn't I do this sooner? But then you also think about if you never had done it, what your life would look like, which is also terrifying. But
it is terrifying. It is terrifying. The whole thing is terrifying, especially if you're getting a diagnosis. I think I once went to the ER with a panic attack, it was my first panic attack ever, and they just were like, take a Xanax, and I was like, no, I'm not taking a Xanax. I don't want to take a Xanax. But I was like, something's definitely off. So I think that's why I want to encourage people to put in the time and resources to shop around for somebody who you think will be helpful, who will take you seriously if you feel like something's off.
Yeah. Awesome. And I would love to, if it's okay with you, maybe segue into, I'm super curious actually about not only your debate days, but all of the schooling that you've done and sort of your general perspective on wanting to learn about other cultures. You traveled a fair amount, especially to pretty awesome places. Check out her Instagram if you haven't. The pictures look absolutely stunning. But I would love to learn about sort of like the culture and the perspective behind those pictures. So I would love for your take on like what it is about sort of culture, what you've learned from other people that has maybe impacted your day-to-day life of how you navigate generally. Like, what have you learned along the way from courses or traveling or anything that's stuck with you?
Like, as I was doing those things.
Yeah.
Which is funny enough because I think now, since I can fly long distances, I mean, there's still a level of anxiety that I have, but I'm very happy now that I have my grounding techniques. I have let's do this. I want to go to like Turkey. I want to go, see Cappadocia. Like, I am very excited now because it's taken a number of years for me to get to this point. So yes, I love traveling now. I mean, when I say love, I don't love traveling, but I love seeing the places.
Yeah, getting there.
Once I'm there, I love it. But yeah, I've been fortunate enough to see a lot of really cool places, and I did as well when I was younger. So when I was in high school, I had opportunities to go to China, and I had a really cool immersive Silk Road trip as I was backpacking through China with my high school class, and that's specifically because I took Chinese. Cool. So that was pretty cool. I saw the different, I think it's the Tiananmen soldiers or something like that, and I went to Urumqi and Xi'an, and I stayed near the Taklamakan mountains. Like, I've always been this traveler of sorts. There's a period in my life when I couldn't do it. When I've now started getting back into being able to do those things, I recently went to Cappadocia and Istanbul, and I love the history there. I love the food there, the baklava. You guys get the baklava. I recently went to Dubai and Bombay, and also Zermatt. I went to Switzerland, and I have more plans to go to Greece and Spain, and I've also been to Ireland. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm doing now. I'm like, okay. I did study at UCT during Penn even. So before my GAD diagnosis, I did travel to South Africa, which was like a big deal for me to be in South Africa and study at UCT in Cape Town. So I have been privileged enough to have a lot of opportunities to see the world. I would say there are a lot of things that I got to see there and experience that put things into perspective for me. Have also, in some ways, I feel like I know myself more because I've seen the way different people live. I've seen, I've had experiences with different cultures and different types of people, and I think in a lot of ways I have always felt like learning about the way people even see the world, or learning about the way people understand the world as it is. Everyone comes from a different background. Your nurturing may be different, your schooling might be different, or whatever it is. Everybody has a different perspective or different lens in which they see the world. And so getting to interact with people who have different perspectives of life is really cool, because I think it's very easy to get stuck in your bubble and then be like, this is the way life is, and this is the way it is, because you put yourself in a bubble with the same exact people.
Exactly.
And then, you might have culture shock or whatever, but you're getting to see the world from different perspectives. So I think in a way, actually, besides the education of it, it helps me, I think, figure out even how to, interact with different people or communicate with different people, because everyone has a different communication style. It's made me a more compassionate teacher, and it's made me a better, I think, empath when it comes to understanding where someone's coming with, whether it's a problem they have or something they want to learn, or how they communicate what that problem is or communicate what that gap is. So there's a lot of things, I think, with travel that have opened my eyes into kind of even solidifying who I am as a person, but as a teacher as well. So I think I am very lucky enough that I have had those opportunities to see the world. I'm very excited because now I'm like, okay, I can get on that flight, and I want to see more of the world. You know, I want to experience more of what the world has to offer.
I absolutely love that. I love the piece that you said about how that's translated into how you teach and probably interact with students, because everybody does come from a different background. Their understanding of maybe communication or even like learning dance moves can be completely different in one place than another, I imagine.
Absolutely.
So I would love to learn about in dance classes now that you start teaching, and was it around 2018, 2019 that you started teaching, or was that later?
Oh my gosh. Yes, I want to say 2017, 2018.
Oh, awesome.
Something like that.
So as you start teaching, like what lessons are you learning along the way? Not just about, at a certain point you are a performer and you do dance, but teaching, I imagine, is a completely different field that you're operating in. So like what lessons are you learning at that point of like what teaching entails?
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like although I have been teaching in New York City and even virtually and all that since that time, I also taught a bit when I was younger. Like when I was 15, 16, I would sometimes choreograph stuff for my dance company in high school or with Strictly Funk. I was one of the choreographers for like the shows every year after like I think my freshman year, and then I was also a director for one of the shows, and I was also like chair at a certain point. So I in a lot of ways that experience had been building up. Of not just choreography, not just musicality, not just performance, but also teaching and being able to convey to people what is this movement doing and how to do it, or how are ways I can change it up, or okay, I don't feel it in this way, how else can I think about it so that I can actually capture the essence of the movement or whatever it is. That had been already building, I think, as a foundation for a long time. I actually learned about musicality, I think, in the depth that I have now understood it, starting in college, from, you know, the upperclassmen in Strictly Funk, and they could hear things that I'm like, I can't hear it. It took me years. I was like, I'm so bad at this. Like, I don't know how to choreograph. I don't hear the music. What are the layers? I think I remember there's a routine at one point where I'm like 2 beats late for every move, and I watch it sometimes and I'm like, oof. Like everybody's on point and I'm like 2 beats late, or like I'm like an 8 count delayed on everything. I just couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear the music that I can hear now. And I think that's why I encourage my students so much to keep listening and keep training their ear, because it's a process, and you may not be amazing at it initially. I wasn't, and it took me longer. It may take people no time. Everybody's different. But I think I started teaching consistently in 2018, in 2017. And I think you learn a lot of things along the way. You learn how to conduct yourself in a classroom. You learn how to better prepare for your classes. So the prep work starts well in advance, for sure, for a class. You learn the confidence, I think, to command the room. And I think also the poise and the sort of, how should I say this? Like being kind of a leader in your field and being able to understand your niche really, really well is one thing, and to deliver it consistently is another thing, and then to convey it and communicate it is a whole other thing. So I think when you are teaching, I think that is when I really understood the difference of being a teacher and being a performer, and being somebody who just, I think, dances to the capacity that I dance, and then also having to be able to give that to somebody else as a means for them to improve their technique or their form. And it gave me a really good appreciation for, yes, I'm learning all these things about myself, even as I was going through all my GAD issues and all my anxiety issues, because I had a cease there also, navigating and helping me out. And when I wasn't physically able to do things, you know, sometimes she'd hold my hand just to get there, something like that. But I think throughout the whole process, whether it was teaching with a cease or directing for #Stories by Tanya, or now teaching in a classroom where I have assistants, but I'm still leading the class, I think I have come to understand there is so much involved in the communication of something. the concept that you're teaching is not just the dance, it's not just the choreo, it's not just the movement. It's in a lot of ways a lot of different aspects of teaching that I don't know, have just give me this sense of like I think even till today I still think about how do I be a better teacher. I might get old and frail and not be able to perform in front of the camera, but it might get harder for me. Of course, everybody ages, but sure. But it's given me such a real profound appreciation for the effect that you can have on people's lives and what you can give to people that hopefully they can carry on in a positive way. That's your hope, that whatever it is that you've given to somebody in a classroom or as you've taught them. And I have had students for so many years. And like I said, some of my students have gone on and done some incredible things. And some of my students are very new and they're just coming to me or they're just hearing about me. And my hope is always that as I've gone through the years and learned things more about myself or learned how to communicate things, my goal is always that my effect or my impact on people is hopefully positive in some degree, in some aspect. That is always the hope. I mean, of course, you never know if that's true, but it's a difficult bar constantly to hold yourself to that level of almost perfection. So yeah, no, I have a deep respect for all teachers who've been doing this a very long time. Yeah. But I think that's what I've kind of figured out throughout the years, and hopefully that I can keep doing for as long as I'm able to.
That is awesome. I would love to. I'm glad you brought up Stories by Tanya, because I was like looking through all of those past videos, and it was so cool how you tackled different aspects of like fear, resentment, longing, like all those different emotions that are captured on video, which is so cool to see, by the way.
Thank you.
So I would love to learn about the idea of, I guess, what I would call creative confidence. So this ability of like, there's some people who are very, very creative, I imagine, and it may just be to themselves. Like maybe they just have a sketchbook that they're writing in, but they don't really share it with anybody. Maybe they record music for themselves. They may do dance videos for themselves and never post anything publicly. But there's a piece of, I imagine, your job as well, where there's some public approval attached to it, where you do have people showing up to your classes, you do post things on social media, and it's somewhat subject to everyone else looking at it. So I would love to learn where you maybe, if this was always innate in you or something you had to develop, of having the confidence to push things out there where you're not sure what the reaction is going to be. How do you navigate, I guess, that aspect of it?
Ooh, that is an excellent question, because I think it's changed over the years. So there are times where I'm super confident and I'm like, all right, I'm in my bubble of sorts and I'm just posting away. Yeah. And then there's also periods of my life where I'm like really like self-conscious. And I think for me, I went through a major weight loss transformation, and I've gone up and down my whole life. I had childhood obesity when I was younger. I was like almost pre-diabetic when I was 18. Wow. It was a real issue. Like I was 200 pounds when I was like 18 years old, and I was 5'1". So I had some really massive weight, I think, emotional binge eating. There was a lot there that I was not handling well. And so I think when you're in front of the camera a lot, there's always that self-consciousness. I think being a woman also is another degree of self-consciousness, and people can be very unkind, especially on social media, because it's easy to write something, type something, but if you are not the person showing up on camera consistently no matter what's going on in your personal life, your professional life, you are just ready to go when that camera hits on, it's a very difficult task to do. A, that's just a performance. B, if you're someone who's directing something, so it was #Stories by Tanya, sometimes I would take hours to just edit and work with my videographer, work with the people I was working, just to get the right scene or the right emotion. I think when I was a kid, I probably had less fear, also because social media wasn't as viral as it is now. So there's a little bit of like protection there. Now it's quite intense because you don't know what's going to go viral. You don't know how many people are actually going to see something. If they're going to appreciate it, maybe somebody from New York could appreciate it. Maybe someone from, I don't know, a different side of the world is not going to appreciate it. You can't control necessarily the reaction to that, because nowadays so many eyeballs are on something, and you really, unless you take it down, can't control what the response will be. You have to be okay with that. So the level of confidence, I think, now is kind of unreal to me, because when I was doing #Stories by Tanya, again, social media, this was pre-pandemic. Social media was not what it is now. But the level of confidence and self-consciousness, they change over the years. Or that's why what I said before, which is your environment is very important. Like, putting yourself around people who love you and cheer you on is very important for an artist, very important for anyone, but very important also if you are doing something like this, which is you are creating a brand of consumption where you are the visible product, or you are the face of it, or you are basically, and I think also as a dancer, putting your body on display. And I don't mean like the clothes you're wearing that are revealing or anything like that. I mean, wear whatever you want. But, for me, that has been a process to even remove my hat and put makeup on, because I was like, oh, let me try to learn how to do makeup, because on SA Grooves, I wore my hat and I just like, nobody look at me, but I'm dancing. And now that's been a change of like, let me feel confident in my skin. Let me wear a blouse. Let me wear a lehenga. I mean, that was like a big deal for me, that I was like, oh, you can see my face. Or you can see, my body moving. That's very weird for me, you know, like I had this weird sense of protecting myself because I'm more introverted anyways, but dance was really for me, and I didn't necessarily want it to be for anybody else. But of course now with social media and how you are you're the person dancing, you're the person people are consuming. It's very human and very natural to go through waves of it. But I think you always have to start somewhere. And I have a confidence now, not necessarily in everything that I do. I'm not going to be perfect every day. I do not have that expectation of myself. That's quite silly. But I have a sense, a deeper confidence now than I did when I was in my 20s, which is that I'll show up. Like, I'll still show up the next day. Like, someone might throw something at me and I'm like, I still have to go into the classroom and I still have to perform. I still have to teach. I still have to get on camera. So whether or not I'm feeling good in my skin or not, whether I'm having a bad day or not, whether something's going on where I'm feeling stressed out, I still have to get up and do the job. So there is that confidence of, say whatever you want to say, that's fine. People have their opinions, but it doesn't distract me from the job at hand, which is that I still have to do what I have to do. But yes, absolutely. I think it takes a level of resilience to be able to do that. And it takes a level of consistency, and you have to build that, which means that you have to try. You have to keep trying. And I think if every day you get up and try, and every day you get up and keep going, that's really the only thing that will matter. That's what keeps people in the game longer, because they just never give up. And I gave this example off the record, but on the record, Rohit Gajare, I think he had already started by the time I think SA Grooves formed. He had a company called Exodus, and watching Rohit, like, that guy keeps going, you know what I mean? He was traveling the other time. I have a lot of respect for Rohit. And that consistency is so incredible. And even as you age, as you get older, you show up and you show up and you show up. A video does not do, oh my God, there's a fly. There's a video that doesn't do well. It's okay. Next day, you get up. You know what I mean? You keep doing it, you keep doing it, you keep doing it. I think that's a deeper level of confidence in your game.
I love the word that you use, resilience, and it's actually a perfect segue to a fire quote that I saw on your LinkedIn. We're back to your LinkedIn. It was by Thomas Edison. God, Shout out Thomas Edison.
Shout out Thomas Edison.
He said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work."
Oh gosh, that is the most nerdy thing I've ever put on my LinkedIn.
which I love, by the way.
Oh my God.
So I think I would love to harp on that resilience piece of what failure looks different for everyone. It could be failure in terms of like if people are posting videos, they feel like I need to hit this certain level of something, or for themselves, it's just like success at the bare minimum is just that I had the confidence to post something. So failure is subjective. It could go across the board.
Yeah.
But for you, what is that process of understanding that maybe things aren't going to work and you have to keep pushing forward look like? Like, have there been moments where there have been multiple, we'll call it failed attempts at something, and then you've ended up succeeding? You're like, all right, it did work out. Or what does the process of navigating failure look like for you?
Yeah, honestly, that is a very good question, because I feel like I've failed a lot in my life. And failure looks different for everyone. Everyone's own perception of failure is also different.
Yeah.
You could be looking really fly on camera and killing it, and inside feel like you're a failure. That's the funny thing about this, is you really don't know what's going on in someone's inner mind as they have to do what they're doing. And I had a student who mentioned to me the other day, even, she was like, I have this anxiety when I get on camera and perform. And I was like, I'll be honest with you, I still do. I still have that. And she's like, no, there's no way. Like, you always look so confident. I'm like, the inner mind is a crazy place, you know? Like, you can always be going through these things of what does failure look like for you? What does it feel like? And I think with dance, especially because dance is movement based. I mean, you have to put your body on display for people to understand. Movement is dance. It's not just what you wear. It's not just what you wear on your face, your makeup. You're using your whole body, your facials to your whole body to express something, whether it's a story or it's a style of choice. And that is very difficult to do every day of your life if you're doing this consistently. So failure does look different, I think, for everyone. And I think for me, I've had different moments where I have felt that way. You know, I think post the pandemic, I was kind of not sure where I wanted to go with my career at that point, especially as I turned 30. I was like, I'm not really sure. Can I keep doing this? And that, you know, with street jazz, it's something that was trial and error. I tried so many different styles, so many different concepts of classes before it became something where I was like, I'm trained in street jazz. Bollywood street jazz seems like a really good fit for me because it's something I've trained many, many years in, and there are fundamental principles of it that resonate with me, from musicality to textures to even the idea of performance, to things that I'm now teaching with a lot of nuance and a lot of depth. But to get to that process where you feel confident in your element, I mean, yeah, I went through so many iterations of things, so many times where I felt like maybe my body can't handle it, maybe I'm not trained any more than the way that I should be, maybe I've gained weight and I don't look good on screen, like, so the trial and error process is very difficult. Sometimes it can even be what someone said to you, which, you know, sometimes people are not nice, even to your face, or they may say something off the hand or whatever. Sometimes it's something online. Sometimes you can just sense an energy or feel unwelcomed. And feel like something is being gatekept or something like that. So there are all these elements that I think can be difficult and scary and make you feel like you are less than, or make you feel like maybe you won't be capable. And if you're not seeing it in the numbers, or you're not seeing it in your classes, you're not seeing it in your students, you're not seeing it in the numbers on your videos, it's very easy to think that maybe I have failed. So I think as any artist, you often feel that in spurts. Not everyone's going to be on their A game every day. Not everything is always going to be amazing every day. But I think that I have learned that the best thing you can do is to keep working. The best thing you can do is to keep putting things out, keep doing ideas, keep doing concepts to the extent that you can. Okay, like to the extent that it is possible and feasible in your life, that you can keep trying and keep going with something. It doesn't need to be every day, but I think if you stay consistent with the trial and error process, you stay consistent with understanding how things are working, how your brand even fits into the market, all those things, I think that consistency and analyzing it and then implementing it. I think that's how you don't really fail. You may fail that day. You may fail that phase. But I think the consistency of it, people will look at that and you will see at least a turnaround. You will see something of growth. But I think that is difficult. I won't lie. It is difficult to go through that process and to analyze and to fit things, especially with dance. Because, again, it's your whole body.
Yeah.
It is physical labor that you're doing. So that's what I would say in terms of the idea of failure. To me, has changed over the years. And now I'm perfectly comfortable with failing because I'm like, that's fine. That's just today. We'll keep going the next day.
That makes sense. And in terms of one area I would love to cover is sort of this idea of energy expenditure. So I know, like, I remember we were waiting outside of one of your classes, and I remember I was talking to you about just like, you go through a lot of classes, you're obviously dealing with a lot of students. I remember equating it to, I think I had done like a webinar at work, and I was just hosting it. And I wasn't even on the panel. I was just hosting the webinar, introducing people. Yeah. And I remember how drained I felt after an hour of just like talking, right? Yeah. So I just thinking about you, I was like, wow, you teach these many classes. I was like, you have to go in front of the students. You have to think of concepts. You have to figure out how to communicate certain dance moves. There's classes are different in terms of probably maybe the speed everything's picking everything up. So there may be individual attention. Like all this is running through my head while we're sitting outside your class. And I was like, all of this is remarkable that you have the energy expended to do this. And that's just within that specific class. This isn't about like the dance concept videos that you're doing, and then you have real life going on top of that. So there's, for anybody, even like the most extroverted of people, I imagine so much energy that you can expend to do all of these things and navigate all of this in your life. Yeah. I would love to learn the process or maybe the evolution of how you've navigated your energy expenditure. Like, has it always been you figured out the balance? Was there a lot you had to figure out along the way? You know, where are you at today maybe versus where you were at before?
It's a very good question, because yes, I know it may not seem from this interview, but I am actually pretty introverted. I'm good one-on-one with people. I maybe with a few people, but I have a lot of time where I'm just like, I need to be left alone, especially as I create or as I work, whether it was hashtag stories by Tanya or my classes. Because then there are moments where you have to turn on and then you have to be in front of the camera, or you have to be in the classroom really loud, very energetic. And when I was in my 20s, I was like, all right, I'm just going to do everything full out. Like, I remember I go through rounds and I would just be like, full out for everything. It's funny, I laughed about this in my intensive last week with my students, being like, don't do that. Mark it. Learn how to mark properly. You don't need to go super full out every time. Yeah. But I think that I definitely had this sort of... how should I say this? I think that I learned how much downtime I needed in order to pull off whatever I needed to do. So I am somebody who needs to recharge. I'm a homebody. I need a nice environment. I need my PTs, my physical therapists. There are a lot of needs that I have with regards to making sure I can do what I'm doing in the classroom, which I think as I've aged have only gotten more intense, and with just wanting certain things to feel like calm and protected around me so that I can do the best job as I can as a teacher, as a choreographer, and to a certain degree as a director, even with a lot of these things. But I think there's also, people don't understand this. I think with teaching class, there is of course the teaching of class, right? Which is very involved. I mean, you have to be able to convey and communicate, handle questions, navigate issues with, sometimes there's an issue with the music or the videographer or whatever is happening, the lights. Sometimes it's the space itself.
There's no air conditioning.
There's
sometimes.
no AC. Sometimes you're stressed out to go over. Maybe you're in the last 10 minutes of class. You have to perform. Their outfits, their hair. There's a lot going on in a classroom setting. Sometimes now classes are 60 people, 70 people, which pre-pandemic was not a thing. SA Grooves, we had 30 people. That was a big class. Now it's way more people, and you have New York City Center, and so it's a lot of energy you're expending to be able to put on a good show and put on a good class for people to enjoy themselves, and being able, very, very aware of what it is you're teaching, being able to answer questions. There's all of that for sure. There's also the creation process. So to be able to put something together that's great, that people want to learn, from the music choices to the choreography choices to the movement choices, sometimes it's like, am I making it unique enough? Am I making it different enough? Am I making it so that it's something that people can keep up with? Is the intensity too hard? Is the level too difficult? That creation process itself is there's a ton of energy that goes into that.
Yeah.
And that's why I think there's such a difference between even being a choreographer and being a teacher, and being a choreographer and a teacher and then also being a performer. And somehow you have to do all those things in a 2-hour class, which is crazy. But that's just class nowadays. I think, you know, there's other things. If you want to do your reels, you have to get up and make sure you look nice. And did you stretch out? Did you prep? Have you worked out? Are you feeling, you know, because dance is a physical thing, a lot of this is about your dance fitness as well. And your agility and your flexibility. And like I said, I think dance is crazy, but I think, and this is what I have understood as I've gotten older, you need to know what works for you. Okay, you as a person might be very different from the person next to you. It's perfectly fine. You need what you need to do your job, right? And let's see this, you guys. And I think that I have started to figure out I think I give myself more grace than I did as a kid, because I also know, like, even for me, sometimes to watch myself dance can be very anxiety inducing with body dysmorphia or with whatever, with my weight loss transformations, or if I've gained weight, or how my outfit looks. You know, is my outfit looking okay? Is my hair looking like? There's anxiety in feeling the need to use every piece of content you filmed, whether it's class or otherwise, because that's how you grow, and you need to be able to put yourself out there. So, there is energy expenditure in all of this that people don't realize. There's so many facets to investing your time, energy, and resources in making one class happen. Yeah. Let alone one reel, let alone one concept video, let alone the energy involved is insane. Yeah. So when you start to understand all the degrees of energy you are expending, and if you have things like GAD, if you have things where you're more introverted, you don't necessarily need to go at a pace that feels unreasonable to you. You don't have to. I think it's the pressure sometimes we feel, and I understand social media has a lot of, I feel it too. It's pressure, you know what I mean? But I think I have become more comfortable in voicing my needs and voicing what I need to feel like I have the energy to actually invest in all of these things. So that will change, of course, as your life priorities change, as you get older, as your family needs change, as there's so many things in life that maybe you can't do all the things all the time. Yeah. And that's okay. But you need to figure out, I think, what kind of recharges you so that you are mentally and physically able to do the job to the best of your ability. So, like I said, I think to do this consistently is very hard because you have to continually navigate those challenges, and continually figure out, you know, if I need to get to it is a numbers game to a certain extent. If I need to build a brand in X number of time, how much energy can I do it? And how much time do I have to do it? And what is my environment such that I can do it? Yeah. And then maybe the next year you have different priorities, or you're like, nope, this is going to be for the next 5 years, or whatever it is. It's fine to think like that, but I think it's very, very important, especially if you're somebody like me who's more introverted and has a lot of anxiety, that you figure out your best tools to equip yourself to do the job, which is very intense. I mean, for someone like me, I get overwhelmed all the time. But touch wood, I have really good family. I have a very good support system. I have really good friends. And so I'm able to, I think, manage that, so to speak, day to day.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think what was interesting to me about when you were explaining all that is at a certain point, when you said you have to prioritize it for yourself based on what you specifically need, I know I've talked to a good amount of people who maybe recognize what their priorities are for their needs, but still don't necessarily prioritize it directly, if that makes sense. So they may realize like, hey, I actually do need a lot more time to recharge, or actually I don't want to go to this party that I got invited to, but like socially I feel like I have to go now, and maybe those priorities change as you get older. I was wondering if you navigated that at all, or if you've seen people maybe try to get out of that realm now that they feel like they are obligated to do certain things even if they don't want to, and finally prioritizing. Like how hard was it for you to prioritize, or was it an easy choice for you?
Yeah, like if you have competing things going on.
Yeah, or you feel like you need to participate in something that maybe you don't necessarily want to.
Yeah. Like the networking stuff.
Yeah. Or
like going out and meeting people. And yeah, I get tired. I do get tired. Sometimes I'm like, I really want to eat pizza and watch Netflix.
A common feeling.
Sometimes I'm like, oh, but you know, Mandalorian season 3. I actually really like Mandalorian. I never thought I would like it, but I really like it. Or The Last of Us. I'm shouting out names now. Yeah. I am that type of person where I'm like, I like certain things, like sit down things, like nice dinners and being one-on-one with people, but like parties and loud noises and overstimulation. I'm like, I freak out. I'm like, there's too much for me to consume, for me to feel like I can even hear my own thoughts. I get overstimulated easily by noises, by my even classes sometimes are overstimulating because of the lights and the screaming, and so I'm wired for a good 5 hours post class. Like I'm like I can't. Oh my God. Some people know what I'm talking about, where you're like, I can't sleep. But yeah, I think that it is difficult to navigate when you have an opportunity to meet somebody or go out for something, or maybe you have a networking or influencer gig or something like that, which I think now with teaching, it's interesting. Teaching has evolved to in some ways being a content creator and being an influencer. Yeah. Whereas I guess I never really saw it that way pre-pandemic. I was like, I'm a teacher and I dance and I direct, but I don't think of myself as an influencer. But now there are events to go to and people to see and network, and it's great. It's awesome. You have a cool community that you're kind of linking with, and more job opportunities and that kind of thing, and more gigs. But yeah, absolutely. I would say the dedication, especially with regards to dance, because you have choreography time, you have time where you have to dedicate to learning something and teaching something. Right? Not only do you have to be able to perform it and know the choreography yourself, you have to be able to explain it. Yeah. And then perform it. Yeah. So there are like timelines of time management that you need to be able to say, and especially with you if you have anxiety or if you are trying to manage your energy levels, being able to pick and choose, okay, this is important to me, I need to be able to do this, but then I have to leave at this time because I have to have rest time, or I can't have this conversation with someone right now, I have to be mentally prepared for XYZ. I have learned to say no. Like I have learned to say no to things, like whether it's sometimes it's even for the amount of pay I'm getting, or the just the energy expenditure I have to have, and then on top of that do other stuff. Sometimes a lot of times when I was younger, I would just be like, yeah, but it's such a great exposure, like I should do it. And now that I'm older, I'm like, no, because I fundamentally believe dancers need to be paid. Like dance needs to be paid, and their dancers need to be paid. I think it's often sad that sometimes dancers aren't paid for a lot of opportunities, and I think they ought to be, because there's so much involved in being able to pull off a dance. I mean, that's why we train, right? We know how difficult it is. But I think that I have learned to say no to things when I feel overwhelmed, or when I feel overstimulated, or when I just don't want to do something that I know will drain me such that I can't do a good job in my class, or whatever it is. Or maybe I would rather go and spend time with a friend, or maybe I would rather go spend time with someone I haven't seen in a long time, or maybe I'd rather go home to Dallas and chill out with my family. Like those are the decisions that I'm okay making now. And I think when I was in my 20s, maybe it would have been a bit more difficult for me. But now I think I've learned to prioritize myself in a way that I know I can do my job.
Yeah.
But it's difficult. It is difficult.
Yeah, I think especially with having I don't know if confidence is the right word, but having, I guess, the wherewithal to be able to say no is sometimes difficult, especially if you're in a habit of saying yes at that point.
Especially if you're a people pleaser.
Yeah, on top of that.
Recovering people pleaser.
Recovering, always recovering. I would love to learn. I went to and this is the best way I could think to frame this question, but I went to a concert recently by a guy named Rajinder, and he basically had this show called Portals.
Yeah.
And the idea of the show was that all of us have different portals in our lives. So like things that people see outwardly that they know about. So they may see you as just the dancer. They may see you as someone who creates concept videos, but they may not know the things that you're battling underneath or the different sides to your personality. Maybe you're goofy, maybe you're introverted, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So what are some portals that you think are fairly widely accessible to the general audience? And then what are some things that maybe people really don't know about you that, would be worth sharing?
Yeah, that's very in-depth, that portals idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people probably, I'm not sure how everybody sees me or what everyone's opinion is of me. I'm not fully aware of everything, but
sure.
No, I mean, I've had instances where students have come up to me and been so sweet about either like noticing my weight loss transformation or being inspired by even like post essay grooves teaching for Bollywood Street Jazz or I mean, people are so sweet, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've also had aspects where I think I with hashtag stories by Tanya, where people have kind of seen the way in which I see the world or perceptions that I have where I want to speak about something in depth of storytelling that maybe is not as cookie cutter as the worlds that sometimes we want to believe in.
Sure.
Whether it's toxicity or it's finding love or like finding love in small spaces, or whether it's like doing stories where we feel like there are multiple life partners for us or multiple things like that. Or I think even I had one on bullying, and I mean I've been doing that for a while. I just always wanted to, like my essays in high school, like dive deep into like finding ways in which we see the world. Very nerding out, but telling it through dance. And so I think there are aspects which people see that more in-depth side to me that is a little bit more thought-provoking, and I like to make comments about things that people maybe find it like controversial, but for me it's like just, this is life. There's going to be things that are not black and white. And I loved doing that through movement because I actually did that a lot in college. We did a lot of things through storytelling. Dance was storytelling for us, and not just like a trend or a trending reel, or there was depth to the way we were conveying a thought through the act of storytelling. And so that's always been very important to me. I think people know that with hashtag stories by Tanya. It takes a lot of energy to do that, but I think people know that. And then there are aspects of being the teacher, being able to help people so that they feel more confident, or they feel like they've improved technically, or being more nuanced about the customizing lessons for them, whether it's my private lessons or the intensive. And then also some of my stuff, I think people see me as like more, like my stuff can be very intense when I'm in class, when I'm teaching. It's very technical. There's a lot of speed. So these are all things I think people maybe have insights and are accessible because I've put it out there. There are probably other aspects that people don't know about, portals that people don't know about me, probably my GAD, probably the levels of anxiety I had to overcome to be where I am sitting even right now talking to you. Or even I think like that I may come across as extroverted now or in my classes. Actually, I'm quite an introverted person, and I don't like to have too many people around me, and I can have like 5 people in my life and I'm solid, you know what I mean? Or on some days I'm like, nobody talk to me. Like sometimes even like my parents, I'm like, call me later. I just sometimes have days where I would just want Mandalorian and some popcorn. I'm good. I'm solid. Maybe some wine. But I think probably another aspect that maybe people don't have insight to is probably that, I'm someone, although I think maybe people think I'm always confident and putting all this stuff out and people may think, oh, this is really cool, like whatever. But the truth is I'm always a little scared. I'm always a little bit nervous. I have self-doubt all the time. I get overwhelmed about thinking about what I look like on screen, or how people are consuming my videos, or even my performances levels. Did I do good enough? Did I excel well enough? I ask these questions. I get stressed out. And I don't know if people know that I still have that level of, I question myself all the time. I think it's perfectly human too. But like I said, I think my hope always is, whether it's as a teacher, as a director, as someone who does stories, as someone who teaches frequently or performs, has gone through like all these aspects of my life that I think in some ways are self-limiting, whether it's your weight. Sometimes that can feel self-limiting in an industry which is so focused on superficials. It can feel that way. It may not be true, but it can feel that way.
Yeah.
Or wearing a hat because I'm scared to show my facials, or all those things, are not riding a train because I'm too scared about having a panic attack, or like even now I'm flying to London to teach, and that's a big deal for me because I couldn't fly long distances. Like, there are still elements of this that affect me to a certain degree. Absolutely. But I guess I would want people to know that there's so much I thought I could never do. Like a couple years ago, if you told me I'm flying to London to teach, I'd be like, there's no way I can get on that plane. Or there's no way I can remove this hat and wear makeup and feel confident doing facials and lip singing. There's just no way. Like, I would have been like, you're crazy to tell me that I can do this. But I don't know if people have access to the fact that all these things I am doing now have been years of me actually working on doing those things, like CBT, or managing my anxiety, or doing exposure therapy, or building a quiet level of confidence in performing, or in, even it can be as little as like the decisions of what I'm eating day to day, or the decisions I make about what I'm wearing day to day. Like, all of this has been many, many years of me investing, I think, in myself. So I don't know if anyone maybe sees that aspect of me, but I guess my hope is like people know that there's a lot that people go through in their inner world to maybe show up on screen, or maybe show up in the classroom, and you may not have access to all those details. But if you're feeling that way of like, I feel nervous getting in front of a camera and performing, I feel nervous making a concept video, I feel nervous showing up to a very technical class, that you aren't alone, and that in many ways I feel that way all the time still. So it is almost like we are all connected by that in a lot of ways. And so when I see that in my students, or I see that in the people I work with, I'm like, I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to feel like you're not good enough because you're not wearing the right fit. Or I know what that feels like when you feel like, oh, I don't feel good enough because I didn't nail the choreo in front of the camera. I know what those things feel like. And so I honestly think that's why I teach with such intensity and such passion that I do. It's because I can connect with what that actually feels like. And that's been a whole journey for me to actually get to that point of like, in whatever capacity I have as a teacher, to be able to teach people how to overcome that, because I've lived that. So I don't know if people have known that about me, but yeah, in this podcast you will find out.
I so appreciate you sharing that. And one thing that really resonated with what you said is sort of curating an environment that's safe and comfortable for you based on what your needs are. And I'm reminded of a quote, I forgot, funny enough, a comedian said, I think it was Dave Chappelle, who said like, it's really hard to change the world, but you can make your corner of it pretty great. This idea that like you can curate sort of, maybe you can't change like everything around you, but you could at least curate your own space to be comfortable to what you needed to be and nurture it. But I also am really just interested because you've done so much education around just understanding other cultures, traveling, so much of that. if you could, maybe in your day-to-day interactions, because you do interact with a ton of people when you're not watching The Mandalorian and doing all that, have you ever thought about maybe like, it would be great if more people were doing this, whether it's being kinder to one another or being more understanding of maybe like you just said, they may be going through so much internally just to show up in person. And it doesn't even have to be in class. It could just be in life, right? Yeah. Like, have you done any thinking around like some of the stuff that you've learned over the years of like, hey, maybe if more people were like this, our small corners that we're curating for ourselves could be more accessible to people?
Yeah, like how do you create the idea of how to do it?
Yeah.
Or how do you actually execute on it? Yeah, absolutely. Bullies are everywhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes somebody bullying you in their head. They may not say anything to you, but they may be thinking some things.
Yeah.
I have seen, and to some extent, even as a teacher, it's very jarring because I feel like with social media as the way that it's going right now, it is very difficult. Everything is so consumed, and easily so, and everyone has the right to say whatever they want about you, and they can do it behind a screen, or they can do it to their friends, and you'll never know.
Yeah.
Sometimes you never know.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can change human nature. I think to a certain degree, if you are gonna be consumed so publicly in the way that social media has become a very viral method of giving you eyeballs and giving you the ability to go viral on so many things, if you open yourself up to that, which is difficult to do, but if you open yourself up to that, sometimes people will say not so nice things. Sometimes they'll disagree with something, or they may not like what you're wearing, or they'll be like, who dare, why would you do that? Like, who do you think you are? Yeah. How dare you, right? Like, do you think you're XYZ to be able to show up like this? So I think something turned off.
Oh, you're good. So this one's still running.
So that's okay. Fine, yeah. So I think there are a lot of those instances where you're gonna have to build thicker skin for sure. I honestly, from the time pre-pandemic to during the pandemic, when I was teaching virtually and I was teaching like Instagram challenges, to even the fact that I started to wear different clothes and do different more Bollywood items, or even lip singing and exposing myself in a different way than people had maybe consumed me before.
Yeah.
All of those things, even if you've been in this game for a long time, people will have something to say about you. Absolutely. And you're being publicly consumed, so why shouldn't they?
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely. Your safe space is your responsibility, your obligation to yourself, and your complete right to create an inner world and an environment in which you feel safe. Because honestly, who cares about that XYZ person? If you feel fulfilled and happy in your life, you're doing what you love. All the best, you know what I mean? You keep doing you.
Yeah.
And you have the right tools to, again, get up the next day and to keep going, which at the end of the day is all that's going to matter, is if the next day you get up and you keep going, you wear a smile on your face and you keep going. Because, we can all say things about people, but the person working late at night, the person putting in the hours, the person doing the training, the person flying, the person investing their own resources, the person investing their energy expenditure, that is you. That is nobody else.
Yeah.
So if you can't get up the next day and do all those things, then what are you going to do, right? Like, if you're so focused on what someone might be saying about you. So yeah, absolutely, it is your responsibility, and as well as, something I think you ought to do is to create a world in which you feel safe enough to do what you love to do. And then who cares what somebody says about one video or two videos, or that one move you did, or that one look or fit you had, or that. It won't matter, because the next day you get up again and you do the thing you love to do with the people around you who love you, and then that's all. The only thing that's going to matter is staying power and your consistency. So yeah, I think people should give themselves the power to that. You need to empower yourself to say no to the things that don't do well for you, don't fit well with your nervous system, don't fit well with your environment, and yes to the things that actually you like and you want to be around and you want. Absolutely. You have to do that for yourself. If you need permission, I give you permission, but you have to do it for yourself. Okay. So that's my hope, because I learned to do that very late in life. And now I'm very vocal about the people that cheer me on and love me and, you know, give me that love and energy to be like, okay, tomorrow I get up and I'm going to do the work. You know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely. You need to do that.
I love that. And I think as a way to end the interview, and I, again, so appreciate the time that you spent talking to me and sharing everything that you've shared. You've already shared a lot of ways that you've made improvements in your life, but if there's anything that you didn't cover, I would love to learn about maybe an idea, a concept, even maybe a quote that you hold dear to yourself that has helped you improve as a person.
Yeah. So I think it's the idea of resilience. And I say resilience not in a sort of like, yeah, be resilient. I think it's the idea of, all throughout my life, I always felt the need to work very, very hard and put in a lot of time and energy into my relationships, into helping people understand me more, or feeling like I'm trying to people please in some aspect, trying to justify who I am as a person or why I care so much about X, or do my absolute best, whether it was to the point of self-sacrifice. And be able to somehow prove myself or prove my self-worth over a number of years since I was a kid, whether it was like getting an education, going to Penn, graduating with like a high enough GPA where I felt, oh, that proves my self-worth. Sure. Or directing really, really well in college, or doing that one choreography that I felt made people cry, or, you know, like, yes, I did it, or like, you know, it really resonated. There's so much pressure to prove my self-worth, even in my relationships with my people, my parents, even, to not disappoint them. But I say resilience with a sense of like, resilience to me has become about self-belief, that even if I don't do well, even if I make a mistake, even if I don't put enough time in, the hard work in, to the point of self-sacrifice, even if I don't manage my time well, even if I show up late 15 minutes, I will be resilient enough that I will keep going. I will not let one mistake, one bad experience, one disappointing comment make me feel like I have to give up. I say resilience with a sense of belief that I will not let myself give up. I will do as many things as I need to try. I will try again. I will try a different way. I will keep trying for myself, and not necessarily to disprove somebody or to prove something else to somebody else. I can't control that. Nobody can control that. Resilience with the sense of you are kind of your own creator, and you have to be resilient enough that you believe in it every day. Whether it's a story, whether it's a concept, you have to believe in yourself and show up and look at the camera or look at the classroom and say, this is what I love to do. And there's a reason why. And it's just because I love it so much. I'm passionate about it. I don't care what anyone else has to say about it. Because at the end of the day, I have to get up and I have to do the work. And I have to expend the energy and I have to show up. So I say resilience in that way. Resilience has really shaped everything I do in my life, even the ability to fly to teach in different places, or the ability to fly and work with people. It's all resilience. And I think that's really important in any field, dance or otherwise.
That is a perfect way to end it. I can't thank you enough a million times that you sat down with me, opened up, because it seriously means a lot, you sharing everything that you shared. So thank you again, and
yeah, absolutely.
Excited to chat soon.
Thank you for having me, and I hope one thing I'd just like to add is I really hope that people see the dance, especially with regards to the dance world, that it's so much more than just a class, and it's so much, especially if you're teaching, it's so much more than just one choreography or one routine, and that dancers are really valued for the artists that they are, and that people understand how much work goes into being a dancer. And I think that if we all knew the level of capacity it takes to be a dancer and to put in that energy and to show up and to perform, and your technique and the amount of energy and I think we would be a lot nicer to each other, knowing what it takes to actually show up.
Yeah.
So that, in a way, for me, is a hope that people understand. It doesn't hurt you to be kinder, because you know the level of work always involved in something, but especially with regards to dancers, because I think sometimes we are severely not undercut, but I think people don't value dancers the way they should, especially in the general industry world. So that's my hope, is that we actually see how much work goes into something like this, and that the resilience and the empowerment and everything that it takes, I just think we would be so much nicer.